Hi, welcome to the Perfectly Flawed podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, for those that don't know you, would you like to tell me a little bit who you are and what you do?
So I'm Chelsea Hodges. I'm an Australian swimmer on the Australian swim team. Competed at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games and the Commonwealth Games this year. I'm also a nursing student outside of swimming, and yeah, I've been swimming my whole life.
Nice. And how did you fall in love with swimming? Because I feel like in Australia, like we're waterbound, so it's pretty common for people to go and swimming. But how did you get started?
So growing up in Queensland, parents really wanted me to know how to at least save myself in the water and just basically keep myself afloat. The basics: going for a swim, going for a surf. So yeah, my parents put me in baby lessons, and I was just one of those kids that naturally fell in love with the water. Like I'd rather always be in the water than on land. On the weekends, if parents be like, "Oh, do you want to go play to the park or go to the beach?" It'd always be the beach or the pool or something water based. So that was always, I think, just born inside me. And then yeah, when my parents just put me in swimming lessons, I got to do what I loved in the water and continue doing that. And I made lots of friends, and yeah, it just all fell into place very naturally.
Yeah. And do you think there was a point where you're like, hey, I'm kind of good at this, or I really think I can turn this into a career? Do you think there was like a point where you realized that?
I think when I went to my first age nationals when I was 12, so I'd always, like, gone through states. I think I'd won, like, a few medals at, like, states in age group, but never a gold medal, like, never really thought it's like, "Oh, like, I'm pretty decent at this," but never really thought, like, I could go kind of all the way until my first nationals. My goggles actually broke on the blocks for my 200 breaststroke final, and it was my first ever final in age nationals, and I remember, like, rushing and just finding a pair of goggles, swimming the race, ended up coming, I think, like, 5th or something. And I remember going out to my coach going, "Oh, like, I can do this. Like, I'm someone, like, I've got that in me." And then, just speaking to him, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool. Like, I think I'm pretty good at this. Like, I'm pretty natural at, like, this swimming thing." And was always competitive, but I think that moment really just showed to me that I probably had more than just a competitive side. Like, I had that dedication and willing to actually swim fast, and then never really thought of a career in swimming until probably as I got older and I learnt more about the pathways and the steps that there actually was in swimming. That's when I kind of was like, yeah, this would be cool. Like, this would be for me.
Yeah. Firstly, that is the worst timing to break goggles.
I know. Like, to this day, I have like 3 pairs of goggles with me when I walk out behind the blocks. Like, every time, no matter time trial at the pool, and my coach just laughs at me. He's like, "You're never gonna not have goggles." I was like, "I always just have goggles with me," because it was the worst. I remember standing up, they'd called my name out. I was so excited. It was the first time they've, like, heard my name being called out at nationals. Go to put my goggles down, and they just snap. And I remember just looking at the official in front of me going like, "What do I do?" And they were like, "I don't know, like, we can hold the race a little bit. We need to go find goggles." And I think it was, like, only 2 minutes that I was looking for goggles, but it felt like my whole entire life. But
Yeah, traumatized.
yeah, traumatized.
How did you then, like you said before that you went to Tokyo, what was the lead in for that like for you?
Obviously, like, same with probably everyone else around in the world, it was very different to probably any other Olympic prep, and very different to the Olympic prep I'm kind of starting now going into Paris. For me, when everything got postponed in 2020, everyone knows kind of what that time was like. It was pretty, like, a scary thought, because for that whole kind of 4 years prior, like Rio, I was, I think, 14 or 15 at the trial. So, like, I knew that wasn't my time, and it was always Tokyo was that was my first time I could kind of step up and show kind of the world, like, what I was made of, and that was like a perfect time, would be the right age. And then when, 2 months out from the trials, everything gets cancelled, and they were even talking about not having it again. And we were like, "Oh, wow, like, this is," like, I know myself, I was kind of like, "Oh, like, my whole life has kind of felt like come to this moment, and it's just in a day, it's it's off." So I spent about 8 weeks completely out of the water, and prior to my break after the Olympics, that was my longest time out of the water consecutively. So that was really hard, but it kind of lit a fire that I was like, "Okay," once it got re-announced that it would be in 2021, I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna give this the best crack that I can." Like, I was being tied to my backyard pool on the fence, swimming for, like, hours a day. I was probably doing more training in quarantine than I do now. I was like going into my coach's park down the road doing boxing sessions. I'm not a runner, but I tried to learn how to run. I was just finding ways to be healthy and make sure when we got back in the water, I was kind of like ahead. I didn't have to catch up. And then, yeah, it was just like the perfect prep. Everything went to plan, didn't have any injuries, didn't have any illness. Things just went to plan. And every time I swam, I got faster and faster. And then at trials, when I went 105, 105.99, I always remember that. When I went that one, I saw 105 and I saw number one. So I'd made the Olympic team. It was just a crazy, like, it was a crazy feeling. And that prep obviously was so perfect looking back, but it didn't start perfect. But it was cool how it kind of ended the way that I'd always dreamed it would.
Yeah, that was sort of my next question. Do you view the lead in, like at the time, different to how you see it now?
At the time, we kind of broke it up into like kind of think like 6 or 8 week blocks, because every kind of 6 weeks I'd have a race somewhere in Australia, or even if it was just a time trial at like my pool during training. We kind of broke it into that. So I never saw it as like one big 12-month prep or 18-month prep or however long it was. I just kept seeing it as like small little steps. Oh, okay, I swam faster. Now the next 6 weeks, swam faster. It wasn't until probably around now where I'm looking back and we're now prepping for Paris, I'm looking at it and going, oh, like that was a pretty good prep. Like that was 12 months of continuous just wanting to do the right thing and the same thing and get better and better.
Yeah, and then what was Tokyo the actual experience of the Olympics? Like, how did you feel about your races? And then we can talk about post, but let's start with Tokyo and what it was like when you're actually there.
Yeah, so Tokyo was crazy. It was weird when we were in staging for the Olympics because no one really knew what it was going to be like. Like we had, coaches on the team that had been on like 5 or 6 Olympics or 4 Olympics. Like we'd had athletes like Kate Campbell. This was her 4th Olympics. Seabom, this was her 4th. Like been to so many Olympics before, but no one knew what it was going to be like. So it was pretty scary. And it was also kind of nice. And I think that's why the team bonded so quickly, because we were all new to it. We were all very new to this experience. And then when we went in, the airport situation was strange. Like we got in and we had to stay in the airport for about 6 hours waiting for testing and making sure we were all negative. And then once we got on the bus, but after that, it was really just an exciting time. Our team was so close. Everyone got along so well. And it was just such a great environment to be in. And then with racing, like going into racing, everyone was just so excited. For me, like my 100 individual wasn't too flash. I wasn't, was quite disappointed in that swim. I missed out on the final by 0.01, I think. Came ninth by 0.01. So every swimmer out there knows that that's, everyone has a 0.01 story. Sadly, mine was just at the Olympics and got me missing out on a final. But for me, that was pretty tough. But I still secured the relay spot on the last day. But then they actually called me up to do the heat swim, which we kind of expected and I was kind of hoping to do because I hadn't raced in about 4 days because the 100 was so early on in the program. It was a 9-day long meet. So I really just had to kind of try and keep going even after a disappointing swim. And then, I did the heat, swam faster than I did in the individual. So I was happy with that and then waited the extra day. We swam that final and it was just the most relaxed environment I think I've ever been in. Like it was crazy. Everyone's like, oh, you guys must have been so into it. We were talking about what we were going to eat for dinner that night. And like, we were just excited to go party afterwards. Like that's honestly what we were talking about. And I think that just really helped. And then the race itself is a blur. Don't remember anything to do with the relay. Just remember Kate's last 15 meters when Kaylee and I looked at each other and we were like, we've won this, which is something I don't think anyone really expected. I think our coaches obviously thought we would, but I think we just wanted to have a good swim on the day. But yeah, the Tokyo experience in general was just like, it's amazing, like to look back on it, and especially how crazy it was that no one knew what it was like going into it, but we made such a beautiful thing out of it at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have so many questions that I want to ask. I don't know where to start. How do you mentally and I guess even physically prepare for a 9-day meet? Like, and even, going in, obviously there's a lot of preparation, but even during that, like it's quite taxing. How do you manage that?
I think it's just kind of spacing out. Like, I'm obviously not someone like Emma who races every day. So I did have, I think, about 5 days in total of completely no racing in between the semi-final of my 100 and the heat of the medley relay. So it was kind of, it's a very hard thing to do. And it's not something you can necessarily do in training, because all the other outside distractions you can't replicate outside of a village, you know. And then with COVID as well, we had, like, you know, the daily tests and the, you know, trying not to mingle with other people and trying to stay away from large crowds. So it was kind of harder in that way than a normal kind of 9 day long meet. But I think the best thing that my coach and I did was we prioritized when we needed rest. So it wasn't, I was at the pool, I wasn't at the comp pool every single day. I tried to be there at least once a day, but I kind of looked at it and going, hey, like, if I'm tired, maybe I shouldn't go out to the pool tonight and just stay, have a normal night, go to bed at a normal time, not having that adrenaline rush every day, and kind of not being tired from just watching races, because we did so well that every day there was almost a medal. So, you know, you would watch and get that excitement yourself. So it was just kind of managing that excitement and then managing the distractions and trying to keep life as normal as possible. So when you did have those, you know, days in those 9 days that you were competing, it wasn't too big. But yeah, it is something that's very hard to train for. And I think we've got another, Paris is another 9 day meet, and Worlds is now, I think, like 7 or 8 days. So they're all getting longer, but just something that we just get used to now.
Yeah, because I feel like a 9-day meet is pretty hard to prepare for, and it's not something that happens throughout the year. Like, there's not really any others that you can use as a practice run either.
Yeah.
But as you say, like, Emma obviously had, you know, racing every day, and I think, you know, it's not that uncommon to have a 5-day meet, even 4 days. But I think if you're racing every day, you can kind of get into a rhythm, and it's like, okay, we go in, we race. Okay, now it's time to settle. I do my recovery, I eat, I fuel, I sleep, I rest. Okay, then we go again. But having so much downtime in between, your mind can sort of wander.
Yeah, and it was also hard, like, everyone else was finishing, especially like the last day of the meet. There's not many people still swimming on that last day. It's like the smallest day of the program is the last day. So it was really hard seeing everyone, oh, we're finished now. We can go to, you know, the merch shop. We can go for a walk around the village. And it was reminding yourself, okay, I need to chill out and not think about swimming too much, but I can't let myself, like you said, be too distracted to the point where I'm fully relaxed and not thinking about competition. And it, like, I think that was probably the hardest, like, mentally, was staying focused where everyone around you was getting like, oh, we're almost done, we're almost done. I was like, okay, one more day, and then, you know, one more day, and then one more day. And yeah, I think that was, yeah, that was probably the hardest thing to prepare for. Now, knowing that, you know, it's hard to replicate outside, but my coach always comes up with weird, wacky ways of putting sets at different times. So when you least expect it, type of thing. And that's probably the only way that we've tried to prepare for that the next time.
Yeah, for sure. Then I guess off that, how did you come back after Tokyo? What was it like? How did you process everything? And then you said you had some time out of the pool. What was post Tokyo like for you?
For me, I always expected it to be like sunshine rainbows, really exciting. You know, won Olympic gold medal. You know, should be the happiest I've ever been in my life. I was expecting kind of like my life to change for the better. I don't know why, but for me, it was actually really hard. I was depressed for quite a few months. Well into this year as well. It probably all started with we came back into quarantine, and that was probably the hardest part. Was, you know, we won the Olympic gold, we were flying out of that, like, Tokyo the next night, so we had like such a small period of, you know, relaxing and letting that all go, and then we were put in hotel quarantine for 2 weeks, and we were in Australia, and the hardest part was we were in Australia and you just wanted a hug from your family, but they couldn't come see you. And I was in Darwin, so I was still in a different state to my family. So that was really hard. And that probably just started like a downward kind of trajectory of probably my mental health and how I processed it all, because in quarantine, I probably got a bit angry at myself and angry at the situation. And that anger kind of turned more into like frustration as I got back. And going from probably the fittest in my life I've ever been to not being able to walk around for 2 weeks, physically, you kind of go through that normal kind of fatigue that anyone would. But then it's also that mental, like you're probably the most mentally fit you've ever been at the Olympics. And then you have to process this all, but not in a familiar environment. We weren't eating, you know, heaps. They weren't really fueling us for athletes in there, and eating a lot of 2-minute noodles. So like nutrition wasn't good. And then that just kind of, led me into some bad way of thinking. And I got to the point, I had about 2 months out of the water completely. And then my coach said, okay, well, it's time for you to get back. And I said, no, I'm not ready. So I took an extra month, and then I came back, and I said I was ready, but deep down, I was actually very much scared to swim, because in quarantine, I was just kind of, when you're by yourself, all you can really think about, you find the weirdest things to think about. It's like when you're lying in bed tonight when you need to go to sleep, but you can think of everything else you've got to do. That was what I was doing about the Olympics. I was going, okay, I've got an Olympic goal, but like what went wrong? I just kept focusing on like what went wrong. And the 100 was something that I was disappointed with. So I was spending my whole time going, okay, well, like, why didn't I make the final? Like, why was that 100th of a second? Why didn't I do something different to make that? So just kind of going into that kind of spiral thought, it got to the point where I was actually scared to swim 100 meters. So I refused to race. I refused to do a time trial. I would make up an excuse if I had to do a time trial, but like, oh, I've got like an injury, or, I feel sick, like I can't do it. And my coach knew and kind of put up with it. But it got to the point probably the beginning of the year where we were like prepping for Worlds and Com Games, and I was still very much scared to do 100 meters, but I kind of had to push through that. And then I just started losing that love of the sport because I wasn't focusing on the things that I had been up until the Olympics, and kind of all climaxed into trials this year where I walked behind the blocks pretending that I was confident, but I was shit scared to swim 100 meters. And I knew I hadn't done the work to get the results that I needed. And, I turned around, came third, a second over my PB. And I was just remember being disappointed. And I think everyone kind of thought around me like, oh, must be disappointed I didn't make the team. I was just disappointed I'd let myself get to the point where I'd sabotaged a potential team and those types of things. So that was something that was a pretty hard realization to come to. And then we had to prep for commies in 6 weeks. So that was a big turnaround that I had to do. But yeah, coming after the Olympics was something that I feel like isn't talked about enough. And everyone has their own individual way of coping with the Olympics. And some people swim their best after the Olympics. Some people go through similar things like mine, or even worse, where they completely stop swimming for a while. So I think it was just something that I wasn't prepared for myself, and I hadn't heard other people talk about it, openly. So I didn't think it was normal. And then that just kind of in a battle just kept coming. And now I'm definitely in a much better position. And same with the like Com Games. I was in such a better headspace, and, my love for the sport came back at Com Games. So that was something that was nice. But yeah, after the Olympics was pretty rough, but I've now been able to look back and find the positives of that time, and some of the positive things that did happen when I probably wasn't thinking about them at all.
Yeah, and do you think, like, firstly, I'm sorry to hear that it was such a battle, because that's never what you want to hear from anyone. When your coach initially said, like, it's time for you to come back, and you said no, what was sort of going through your head? Do you think that was very much a scarcity mindset of like, I'm not ready, like quite panicked? And then when you did take that extra month, did that mindset change, or it was like, I just need to commit, I just need to get over this now?
I think it was a little bit of like what you said, like it was that kind of scared, kind of doubtful, probably like I'm not ready to come back. I think it was also like my partner and I were going on holidays later that month. So my whole time I was like, I just want to go on holiday, just want to go on holiday. That'll fix it. So that was kind of the way I kind of thought. I was like, okay, well, maybe I just haven't, separated myself. Like I came home, like I didn't go anywhere and celebrate in, a big way. So I thought the holiday was going to fix it. So then when I came back from the holiday and I was still feeling the same way, I kind of was like, oh, okay, I just have to push through it. Like it's something I just have to push through. And then me pushing through obviously probably wasn't the best way to do it. And I wasn't talking to people about it. So yeah, I definitely think that me saying no was just that doubtful going, okay, but the holiday will fix it. And I just kept having things that coming up that were going to fix it, instead of going, why am I feeling this way and how do I fix it myself?
Yeah. Do you think that as an athlete, there's this expectation that you're supposed to be strong and you just push through when things get hard? And you don't necessarily talk about it because that's just how it is. You know, you just get up every day, you push through, and that's just this sort of what's expected. And there's this pressure that you just keep going. And if you don't, that you're weak or that there's something going on. Do you think that played a part?
I definitely think it did. And I think it's just like the language that falls into normally sport, like, you know, like you said, like toughness and, you know, being resilient. They're normally things that everyone talks, like the general public talks about. Oh, like, you know, athletes are just so strong and tough. And, you know, you meant like you kind of like athletes are kind of pictured like, you know, as the most, you know, indestructible people there are, because it's, you know, all the things that we have to go through. We push our bodies to the limits. So I think it was like and I think that's why it accumulates to how bad it does sometimes in athletes, because it creates more self-doubt going, okay, well, why am I weak in a way? Like it's, you're thinking about that. And it's just, even I've spoken to my coach, just ways around pool deck with people speak. Like if someone has their rough day, you're going, oh, like, well, you know, someone's not swimming well, you kind of go, oh, like pick up your game. Like, what are you doing? Like, you know, and you don't actually think, oh, they actually could be going through something, or you just don't think about that. You're in that moment of, you know, toughness. So that's something that I've spoken to a lot about with my coach and my squad as well, that sometimes we need to just take a step back and be like, maybe let's not say something, and, you know, not using like tough and those types of words to describe those types of situations, because it can happen to everyone.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely times where it's like, okay, we just need to push through here. Like there are definitely moments, and there is a time and place where that needs to happen. But as you say, there's other times where it's like, hang on, there might be something else going on here. They could be absolutely sleep deprived. They haven't eaten properly. They're really stressed with uni or work, or, you know, there's something going on personally for them. And I've just told them to suck it up and just deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, I think it was really hard for like to have that conversation with my squad. And my squad I love dearly, and we're all really close. We're all around the same age and in similar kind of life, you know, times. So we all kind of understood that it's like, oh yeah, we all have our own stuff going on, but we need to actually kind of speak about it. And we don't need to speak about it in the way, oh, this is what's going on in my life, this is what's going bad. It's just saying, yeah, like I'm not motivated right now. And when someone says that, going, oh, like, what are you doing here? Like, go home if you're not motivated. Going, okay, like, well, why? And like, are you okay? And like, that's just a simple, I think, way that would make that situation a little bit easier. And then it makes, you know, I know if I heard that myself, I probably would have more likely said something. I probably still wouldn't have, because it would be like, oh, I'm not tough if I, you know, don't say anything. But I think it would just be reassuring, going, okay, when I feel like I'm ready, I maybe be able to talk about this.
Yeah, and it's so interesting too, because I know I've felt this myself. You know, if someone asks me for help, I never think anything of it. But if I have to go ask for help, it's like, oh, they're going to think this, they're going to think that of me. Like, I can't do that. They're going to react in
Yeah.
a certain way. And it's like, no, I can't. But then if I'm like, a friend come to ask me for help, there is no way that I would say no. Like, of course, I'm going to say, yes, what do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, you know, sometimes I also think, especially like if someone comes to you, like, of course, but I always used to think it's like, oh, well, I don't want to add my problems onto if they're going through something as well. And it's like you're very aware of everyone else have things to go through, but you kind of forget that you also yourself go through things, and it's okay to ask.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you don't have to just deal with everyone else's stuff. You can help, like, put that onto other people without obviously throwing it all and dumping your whole life on them. But you can, you know, get just giving it to some people and just talking about it makes you feel a lot better. Just have,
Yeah.
you know, being okay with that.
Yeah, and I think one of the favorite questions that I've started to learn to ask someone if they've come to me is how can I best support you?
Mm,
So it could just be, I just need to get off my chest, or can you just check in with me tomorrow? Or, you know, can you distract me? Can we talk about something else? Or, you know, tell me a movie that you've seen recently, or can you recommend something on Netflix? It's how can I best support you? It's like, oh, okay, well, like, what do you want me to do? It's like, can I do this rather than offering, ask them what they need.
Exactly, and that was after trials, me coming back in between before like com games. Obviously I couldn't take a break because 6 weeks I was, you know, going to com games. So one of my closest friends in my squad, she just said, okay, well, she knew something was up, and I'd spoken to her briefly about it, but she knew I didn't want to talk about it every day. So she would bring her coloring in and we'd color in. And, you know, we would just do that in silence with friends on TV, coloring in. And that's something that I found really helped me, because it's, you have someone there, but you're not having to feel like you're releasing like your burden on them in a way.
I love that. That's so nice.
Yeah. It was just so cute. We were coloring in and watching Friends.
Yeah, so do you think, like, obviously that helped. Do you think there was anything else that you did, or even looking back, that you could have done that helped you get through that time?
I think the biggest thing for me that I feel like would have helped in that preemptive stage is let myself live a normal 20-year, I think I was 20 at the time, yeah, 20-year-old life. Like, kind of step away from an athlete mindset for even a week. So my break after com games this year, you know, I went out with my friends. I went out to dinner if I could. I exercised if I had time, but I did normal things. Like, I went into uni and studied instead of just doing it at home. I, tried to be as proactive in doing things that like being an athlete normally stops you or hinders or kind of, makes it harder to do. Because I feel like when I came back, I just kind of stayed at home, and I used to think, oh, a break, I just needed to have a rest. Like, I just won't exercise, but I'll just, sit at home, watch Netflix when I can, do uni at home because I don't have to go anywhere and I don't have any responsibilities. Where I feel like it was really nice having a change in stimulus and a change in environment where you're still doing the same things. Like, I still sat and watched Netflix, but it's, prioritizing, okay, I might not feel like going to dinner, but I feel like it would be really good for me to go out, do something that on a Thursday night normally I wouldn't be able to do because I would have training or I'd have something on. And it's just, I think that would be the biggest thing, is just trying to have a little bit of normalcy outside of being an athlete for a while. And it doesn't even have to be for 3 months. It literally could be for a day. You pick a day where it's like, no, I'm gonna live a normal, like, I'm gonna sleep in, or I'm gonna get up and take my dog for a walk instead of having to go to swim in a pool, that type of thing, and just mixing it up.
Yeah. And how did your Tokyo experience help or change the way that you went into the Commonwealth Games?
I think the biggest thing that I did going into the Olympics is everyone talks about, it's the Olympics is the pinnacle of your sport. Don't let yourself get too nervous. That was the biggest thing that I heard from everyone. It's from the moment I made the Olympics to the moment I got to the games, got to the pool. So I think I let myself kind of go in the opposite direction, that I didn't get nervous enough. Like, I didn't amp myself up and let myself be like, yeah, I'm at the Olympics. Like, this is cool. Like, use that environment to help me. And so going into the com games this year, I was like, I'm not going to have any expectations. If I get nervous, that's fine. Like, I remember swimming in the comp pool at com games, just like looking around at everything, going like, oh, this is sick. Like, this is so cool. Like, I'm at the com games. Where at the Olympics, is like, if I saw the rings, I'd be like, oh no, I can't look at that. Like, I can't get too nervous. I can't remind myself, like, I think on the turn end of the pool, there was this big sign of the Olympic ring. So like, looked over all the pool, all the photos looked cool. And I remember I just never looked at it because I was like, that will remind me that I'm at the Olympic Games and I can't let myself, like, it has to be every other meet. Where I think that was the biggest thing, was changing into com games, going, no, I've got a privilege to be at these meets. Let's use, the significance of these competitions. They're not just an everyday meet. There's a reason why they have that significance, and using that to swim faster. And I found myself not as nervous, even though I was using that kind of external environment to get me more amped up.
Yeah. And how do you think that you went at the Com Games, like, reflecting upon it? How do you think you went?
Um, I think I did really well considering the headspace that I was in 6 weeks leading into the com game. I'm not happy with my 100 time. Like, I'm pretty sure I can do a 107 any day of the week in a normal training block. But for me, it wasn't really about times. It was just not being scared to race again. And the 50, I think, was a really good example of that. I'm going through a bit of a undiagnosed health issue at the moment that we're trying to figure it out what it was. So I didn't even know if I could get in to race that 50 meters. And I remember being on pool deck and just going, well, I'm here. I've got 50 meters to swim. It's just up and like, it's just starting and then getting to the other end of the pool. I can do that. And I think turning around and then even doing a PB and winning a medal, then again winning a medal in the 100 and then a medal in the relay as well with the girls at the end. I think they're the things that I'm proud of, because it wasn't necessarily a good swim, but I was proud of the swim, if you get what I mean. Like it were the Olympics, I just focused on the result, where I was like, no, like I focused on just racing, and maybe didn't do the best times in the 100, did a PB in the 50, but both got results of a medal. And it was just being, you know, the third best on the day and making sure I got to the wall as fast as I could.
Yeah, and I can hear just the way that you talk about it is so different to how you spoke about Tokyo. Do you think that the way that you're viewing your race at Com Games, whilst it's not the time that you wanted, the way that you're reflecting upon it, do you think you would have been able to do that after Tokyo?
I think it's hard. Like, it's easy for me to say now, like, oh, I reckon I could, but I think coming back, this is how I probably should have reflected on it. Like, I probably should have looked at the bigger picture. And I think that would be the time where I let myself have those 2 weeks of quarantine where I didn't think about swimming. I think I should have used that time not to think about it, because obviously it's not good to analyze things when you've got like emotions involved, where I didn't do any reflection on my race, go through any analysis until last week. And I've been back in the water for 4 weeks. So I think it was just the timing. I feel like it would have been better if I reflected this way, but just have a better timing with it last year.
Yeah, definitely. And would you say that post Tokyo is probably one of the biggest challenges you faced, or have you faced any other challenges in your career?
I definitely think it's probably number one up there. I do have a few other challenges that I've had to go through. So when I was 15, I had hip surgery. I completely tore my labrum, which is your cartilage in your hip, and had a few bone cysts, had a bit of extra bone growing in my pelvis, and a whole lot of bad things going on. I couldn't walk for a few weeks leading into the surgery. It was affecting me for about 2 years prior. They just didn't really know what was wrong until I had to check. I think I saw 5 physios in the time, or ridiculous amount of physios. Ended up changing to a sports specialist, and they found out it was my hip and what was wrong. And then 3 days later, I was on the surgery table. So that was another thing, that different type of challenge. Obviously, it was more of a physical thing. But back then, I just remember that really kind of nicked into gear, that mental kind of resilience in when it came to injuries and going, okay, I just need to make best of the situation that I've got. And I remember they told me I could only do breaststroke. They reckon it'd take me 12 months to get back to like swimming breaststroke again. I was back in 6 weeks, and I'm pretty sure I did a PB 12 weeks after surgery. And I made my first junior team 12 months after surgery. So I think that it was a challenge. I got the results obviously at the end of it, but that was obviously a challenge in itself, because I think back then I'm like, I don't know how 15-year-old me did that. Like I look at 15-year-olds and I'm like, I was worse than you. Like, how did I do that? Like, everyone's embarrassed of what they were like when they were 15. I was like, I'm embarrassed of other things that I did, but that I did well.
Yeah. No, that's really good. What kind of impact do you think sport, and particularly swimming, has had on your life?
I think it's definitely kind of shaped who I am. Definitely, like, hands down, definitely has. I think it's definitely pushed me forward in life and given me skills that take other people many years of more life experience probably to get. I think, it's not just myself. I'm not trying to, talk myself up to be this amazing person, but I think anyone that does any type of sport, you learn things that people that don't probably will never learn, or will learn later on in life. And it's just that like importance of like, dedication and time planning and having something that you care for so much and having to work your ass off to get it. And, you know, putting your line and pushing your body to the line. My coach and I call it the dark place. Like in training, it's like pushing yourself into that and finding the limits of yourself and then dealing with that. Like, I know, I think that was probably the biggest shift for me in my swimming was, you know, finding how far I could push myself and not letting going, oh, well, I'm pretty stuffed. Like, this must be it. Like going, oh, well, how much further can I go? Obviously not injuring myself and getting sick, but like just finding what my body was capable of. And I think without sport, I wouldn't have found that. And then, you know, it's translated into school, into uni, and, you know, I'm studying nursing. So in health, obviously it's very different than swimming, but it's, you know, seeing how far I can go in that and pushing, you know, my learning capabilities and, you know, my knowledge in that sense that I've learned from sport.
Yeah, and this is a bit of a different question for you. How do you define success, and do you think you've achieved it? And it doesn't have to be like in a swimming context, but however you interpret that, I guess.
For me, like that's a very good question. Success, I think for me is when you've achieved something that you can be proud of in yourself. And I feel like success is definitely a personal thing, not an everyone else thing. I definitely see success as something that I can be really proud of. I can look back on and just feel like content and be really proud that I've accomplished something. And, you know, there's lots of things that I feel like I feel like I've been successful in my nursing and have nothing to do with sport or even, you know, teaching. I've got a rescue dog, and the first time he like laid with me by himself, I was like, oh, success. Like, you know, I can look back, like I'm proud of this. And I think biggest thing that I've learned, especially coming back from Tokyo, that success isn't one big thing. I don't think one person can be successful at everything. I think learning that each thing you can have success with multiple different things and also not have success and fail. Not really, I don't like the word fail, but, you know,
Yeah.
throughout that time in different things. And I think I've definitely been successful in some things. Would not call myself a successful person. Like I feel like I've success my life. I don't think I've found the limits of my life. But I definitely like I have had successful moments and I'm very proud of those moments.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember too that success isn't an endpoint.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you've touched on before how you know, you've done coloring and watched Friends and, you know, you've got a rescue dog and nursing. What other things do you enjoy outside of swimming?
Um, I absolutely love sitting around doing nothing and I love my sleep. So, you know, everyone like, oh, you know, I love going out for walks. I love just sitting around on my ass and doing nothing. I do enjoy like camping and I love the outdoors. My partner and I love doing, you know, when he has a 4-wheel drive, we love going out camping on the weekends if we have time and, you know, sitting around doing nothing in nature, just different to sitting around doing nothing at home. But I just really like being able to sit and relax and turn my mind off. That's something that I really like doing. I do like reading and I'm weird. I like reading medical things. So I like reading medical stories and people's real life encounters of, you know, emergency departments. And I'm reading a good one at the moment where it's like a midwife, you know, all of her crazy stories being midwife. So I like kind of sitting off and turning off that kind of, you know, buzz of the rest of the world and all your thoughts and just like lying there, relaxing, and anything else that, you know, helps me get to that point I like doing.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone in just
Mhm.
like I just like sitting and doing nothing. I think in sport, but particularly swimming, obviously it's very time consuming and it takes a lot out of you physically, mentally, and just the pure time in your days and your weeks and things like that. It's nice just to not be on the go.
Yeah. And I think like I know everyone else is like, I feel like people have to try really hard or feel like they have to try really hard to when they say like, what do you like doing? It's like, I'm proud to say I like sitting at home. I like if I've got time, I like sitting at home. I like watching TV. I feel like it doesn't have to be extravagant things. You don't have to find like if sitting down watching an episodes of a TV show is going to relax you, then that works for you.
Yeah. I find sometimes for me personally, like if I'm got a super busy schedule, or I know I've got a lot coming up, I'll try and sit down and watch something. But in my mind, I'm like going through my to-do list. Okay, what have I got on tomorrow? What do I need to do? Yep. And then I get to the end of the episode, I'm like, I have no idea what I just watched.
Yeah. You can be sitting there like, I'm not taking any of this in.
Yeah.
Just watch things move on the screen.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that, you're starting the lead into Paris. What are your upcoming goals?
For me, December this year, we've got our world short course. So that's actually really exciting for me because I've never done a short course season. So that's definitely a big goal of mine, is just swimming the fastest I can at a home crowd. I think that's definitely a big goal for me. And then basically just keeping the same trajectory that I've had these last couple of weeks and coming back into swimming, is keeping my love for the sport and just seeing how fast I can go without any doubts. I think that's probably the biggest goal, is like not let myself sabotage myself and just see how fast I can go. And yeah, like obviously making Paris is the big goal and winning a medal at Paris. That's all in there. But I think, definitely Melbourne this year at the end of the year is probably my biggest goal at the moment, is just seeing how fast I can swim and being able to do it in front of all my family and friends. Is just, I can't really think of anything else other than that at the moment, because it is such an exciting thing coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a few questions that I would like to ask before wrapping up. And the first one is, do you have an embarrassing sports story?
Apart from my goggles falling off, my first ever media kind of one-on-one thing was in 2018 at the Youth Olympic Games. I just missed out on the final of the 100 breaststroke at the Youth Olympic Games. I think I came like 12th or something. And they were like, oh, we just want our media team was like, oh, we just want to take, a video of you. But we're not going to post it anywhere. It's not going to go to TV. We just want to have like the audio, but we wouldn't mind having some footage. I was like, okay, really tired, just missed the final. And they've gone, oh, how was the swim? How's the day moving? And I was like, yeah, really good. And they're like, we'd won the medal the night before in the 4x1 medley relay. We came second. So they asked me, like, oh, how was last night? And my tired brain, instead of a simple word like, yeah, it was great, I just tried to say phenomenal. It came out phenomenal. They ended up using that clip on Channel 9, Channel 7, Channel 10. So I came home. That was my year 12 year as well. So my whole school saw it. My whole swim team, my partner, I've been with him for 4.5 years. So he saw it and he still uses it to this day. Is that my first ever one-on-one interview? I've stuttered the word phenomenal.
Love it. It's pretty good. The next question I have for you is, what is something that you're most proud of about yourself?
I'm very proud of what I've been able to do this year and how quickly I've been able to turn around like a shitty mindset into something positive and get results from that so quickly. I think that's something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a favorite quote or a favorite piece of advice that you've been given?
My favorite piece of advice is definitely have fun when you're swimming. I know that sounds like so stupid and so simple, but it is that simple, that it is great, that it's like you need to be having fun. You can't push your body to what we do in swimming and any sport and expect to have longevity in it if you're not having fun. Like at the end of the day, we got into the sport because we have fun. So we should keep going on through that. And that's something that you see when we go on teams, is we're all having fun. And the moment that I stop having fun in swimming is when I will retire.
Yeah, for sure. And do you have any tips or advice for those who are listening, or anything else that you would like to add?
Probably just like, I think I've gone through like most advice and all those things, and other tips is make sure you have lots of goggles on you behind the blocks, or make sure someone in the near vicinity has a spare pair of goggles and a spare cap. It's probably definitely my biggest tip, because no one told me that until I had that. So that's probably definitely my biggest tip. But yeah, it's just like having fun and being yourself and surrounding yourself with people that are going to make you in a better headspace than around those that may be negative or bring you down or make you feel you know, more doubtful about what you can do.
Yeah. And use like really simple, easy words in interviews.
Yes, use really simple. Don't try and be fancy. They'll use it whatever you say, even when you stutter.
Oh, that's so good. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you sharing everything that you've been through to date, and best of luck in the future.
Thank you so much. And just for all your listeners and you yourself, my lovely sponsors at LSKD have given me a code for everyone to get 10% off. So it's just Chelsea LSKD when you want to purchase anything. They have their lovely breast cancer awareness collection out now, which I love, and most of the proceedings go towards Breast Cancer Foundation. So yeah, it's a great thing.
That's amazing. Thank you.